Hello, welcome to a series of lectures on urban economics and management with a special focus on developing countries. My name is Lusuga Kironde, Professor of Urban and Land Economics. In our previous lectures, we looked at the meaning, scope, and application of urban economics. We looked at the economics of urbanization. We looked at urban land use patterns, and we looked at urban employment and livelihood earning activities. Now, this one is lecture number 5, where we look at housing and human settlements. And it is my hope that at the end of this lecture, you will have understood the meaning of housing and the heterogeneity of housing attributes, demand and supply factors affecting housing, consumption modes for housing, including own occupation, renting, and affordability, acquisition of housing, whether it be purchase, mortgage, or finance, acquisition of housing in terms of self-incremental construction, condition of human settlements in developing countries, including the prevalence of slums, squatter, unplanned, and informal areas, and the need for national housing policy, laws, institutions, and regulations. What is housing? It is a consumer durable good aimed at giving decent shelter and other services to occupants. Decent housing is considered to be a basic necessity, just as is health, as food and medicine. A sizable proportion of human beings, especially in developing countries, live in grossly inadequate housing with physical and service deficits on the house or on the neighborhood. For owners, however, housing is a major life expenditure or investment. Housing has many social and economic ramifications, but the housing problem differs between countries and over time. Adequate housing is more than 4 walls and a roof. It must have some minimum standards, like to offer security of tenure from arbitrary eviction, to offer some services like water, electricity, sanitation, energy, refuse removal, to be habitable, to be accessible, to have some adequate location, to have some cultural adequacy, and also to be affordable so that occupants are free from eviction and loss of human rights. Housing attributes and services include A attributes, the type of housing, the kind of tenure, construction materials, the location, whether the house is new or old, whether it's public or private, the size and the accommodation and the services offered, whether it is secure or not. And in terms of services, housing should offer shelter, should offer location which gives adequate accessibility. It shouldn't be overcrowded. It should be of adequate size. The economic inputs should also be available. Also, housing offers an address and a prestige. It is also a tax base for governments. It gives a civic profile, and it suffers or benefits from public goods, whether they're harmful or positive, and has many other linkages such as social advantages, economic links, and employment facilities. In terms of housing types, we have bungalows, we have semi-detached houses, we have terraces, there could be single-story, multi-story, maisonettes, flats, apartments, condominiums, whether the housing is new or old, whether it is shared. In terms of rooms, for example, these are the most common in our cities of developing countries, and whether you are talking of bed sitters or not. Now, factors affecting housing demand include population growth, population structure in terms of age, sex, marriage, and divorce, the income of the population, the education of the population, household sizes, household formation rates, migration, and cultural integration. The housing supply side, we are talking of whether the existing stock, which is usually substantial, but it's of variable quality. But there could also be new housing stock, which is usually marginal additions to the existing one, but it's of a better quality. Then other inputs include land, finance, materials, labor, professionalism, and the actors are individuals, developers, the public sector, as well as contractors. How do we consume housing? You can consume housing as an owner, and ownership has got its own benefits because you benefit from the investment over time. Your property can be modified. It offers economic opportunities on the site itself. But the initial cost is high. Housing is immobile and inflexible. The cost of ownership does exist, including government taxes and charges, insurance, maintenance, and also it suffers all benefits from externalities. Renting, the majority the majority of residents in developing countries are renters. When you are renting, you don't gain any equity into the property, but also a tenant may not have commitment to the neighborhood. But on the other hand, the cost of entry is quite low, and you don't have the cost of ownership. You can be mobile, it's flexible, you can change your accommodation, and unfortunately, the role of rental housing is usually underplayed by governments when they are considering policy issues. How do people acquire housing? Most owners use their own savings and construct housing over a long period incrementally. And so as a result, we have very many unfinished houses in developing countries where capital is lying idle. Mortgage facilities exist, but only for a minority because most of them cannot afford the cost of borrowing. So the low mortgage uptake is possibly a result of the high cost of the houses, the high cost of borrowing, the potential borrowers not being bankable. Tenants in most cases rent over several months, which is required in an upfront. The general population has got lower affordability and therefore resulting in poor housing and overcrowding. Housing in informal settlements is mainly self-constructed on land obtained informally, sometimes on marginal locations. Landlots are irregular and irregularly developed, and they lack standard infrastructure such as roads, drains, open spaces, social infrastructure. So the quality of housing in these informal settlements differs, but generally on the poor side and unsafe, especially for children and women. However, most low-income households live in such housing. Houses is durable, it can last for decades of years. In other words, it suffers from obsolescence. And this could be physical wear, economic obsolescence, functional, technological. And therefore, you need policies and strategies to rehabilitate old housing stock and to renew neighborhoods that have degenerated to become slums. Housing suffers from externalities. Externalities are benefits and losses which are enjoyed or suffered by an economic actor who is not party to generating the externality. So accessibility, for example, can improve the value of a neighborhood, even if it's not done by the particular house owners. So public health authorities help by providing goods and services with the public good characteristics such as roads, streets, drains, regulations to address the harmful externalities that may affect housing adversely. The housing problem is changing with time. It differs between countries, it differs even within a country. The housing problem in a country like Tanzania, we are talking of a shortage of 3 million units, although without a minimum standard, this figure needs to be looked at with a question mark. But the quality is not very good. Nationwide, 33% of the houses, of the walls have non-permanent materials, 60% earth and sand floor, 33% thatch roofs, 8% have no toilets, 76% have just pit latrines, and 43% unprotected water resources. So clearly housing should be top on housing agenda of the developing countries. Also, housing has got a lot of intersection with national socio-economic developments. There are real side linkages, there are financial linkages, there are fiscal linkages, and there are socio-economic linkages. And Professor Tibaijuka has captured this in her book, Building Prosperity. Given the breadth and depth of housing, countries need a policy addressing housing as a product, housing supply, housing demand, house prices, housing finance, house occupation, house repair and maintenance, and a neighborhood for adequate housing, and also how to deal with unplanned neighborhoods. Also, you need to deal with the economics of unplanned areas. How do you get land and plan it and service it for new developments? What is the role of the various players, the public sector, local governments, central governments, academic institutions, the private sector? How about housing in the larger economy in terms of employment creation, industrialization, and entrepreneurship? The institutional setup for housing, including strong housing departments within local governments, renewal and development of aged and decayed and run-down neighborhoods, especially those in inner city or on marginal land, and equity issues in housing, including social housing, subsidies, and public housing, and housing and the green agenda, climate change, mitigation, and adaptation, and the peculiar issues pertinent to housing in rural areas as opposed to those in urban areas. To conclude, housing is a complex consumer durable good with many attributes and offering many services. Housing is not a single market, but a composite of several sub-markets. Housing in developing countries is generally wanting, being of poor quality materially, lacking key services, and located in challenging neighborhoods. Unplanned neighborhoods are growing faster than the rest of the city, harboring the majority of state residents in poor rental housing. Improving housing in terms of quality, quantity, and affordability must be at the center stage of development planning. I trust that you like this series of videos, and if so, please do like and also subscribe to our channel. Let us also get your comments so that we can improve in our forthcoming contributions. Thank you for your kind attention.